Good afternoon. Apologies for being a minute or so late there. The technology gremlins have beaten me today, so I do apologise. We'll just let the room calm down a little bit and then we'll get started. I am going to get started, that's okay. So good afternoon everybody, my name is Richard Ayres and I'm a social care advisor at Care England. I want to welcome you to our energy webinar today, focusing on the current energy markets and the options open to care providers, given the challenges we're having currently. The session is designed to help providers with varying levels of energy market knowledge, and I'm delighted to be joined today by our energy consultant, David Woodward from Focus Energy Solutions. David has supported Care England through the energy crisis in 2022 and contracts all Care England's partners who joined the Care England energy tender. He supports myself on a very significant scale and the whole of Care England to lobby government, which saw the relief back in 2022 and has helped us all to share insight with them on the up-and-coming market increases we're seeing across markets currently, given the Middle East challenges. His background and experience has been incredibly helpful across our sector. He only supports and works within adult social care in England, Scotland and Wales, and as a result is an expert in our specific social care needs and requirements. He is not a salesperson, so today is not a window to sell you anything. That is not what we're here for. It's to keep you informed and help you understand what your options are given this challenging time. I'm going to ask David a series of questions reflecting on the current situation. David and I discussed them briefly yesterday to try and establish something that's topical and relative at the moment. And David's going to attempt to share the most up-to-date position as it stands today, and just letting you know that this is changing by the hour in certain situations, but he will make himself available to all of you should you need in the moment advice and guidance on anything energy related. The Care England energy services are free to access for everyone, and it has proven to deliver so far the lowest possible cost to social care providers, with virtually 100% renewals across thousands of meters that have been billed over the last few years. You will not be sold on this event, and if you decide to reach out to David after the event for advice and guidance, that's entirely up to you. Our energy consultant is free, as I said, to social care providers. I'll ask David to introduce himself very briefly in a moment, and then I'll put a few questions to him. You are free to use the chat function. I cannot see the chat function because I've got technology gremlins today, but my colleague Sonam is on the line and will send me questions or let me know if there are questions outstanding. You are free to use the chat function. I would normally suggest that you email me any questions if you want me to ask them on your behalf, but I don't have access to email while I've got technology issues. So after David and I have finished the conversation, we'll just open the floor up and you can put any questions you want to David. We are recording the session, so we will make sure that we send a copy of the recording along with any further information we discuss or believe to be relevant to you after the call. So without further ado, let me please just ask David to very briefly just introduce himself, if that's okay. David.
David Woodward, as Richard said, from Focus Energy Services. I've been working with Richard and Care England for probably 4 years now. I think we've made some fairly significant improvements regarding energy costs for the care sector with Richard and Care England's assistance. I'm quite often referred to as a bit of a geek. I love maths, I love figures. Touch wood, my technology is fairly good at the moment, and we are constantly looking for ways to reduce providers' costs as well as obtain the best contracts for them with an increasing use of IT to assist us.
Fantastic. Thank you, David, for everything you do. You've been an absolute asset to all of us. So David, the Middle East is probably the first issue I want to kind of try and cover off, and this is predominantly gas that we're going to talk about here. I know it does have a slight impact on electricity, but let's just focus on gas at the moment. Can you just give us a quick update on sort of where we are on the Middle East and the gas impact, please?
Sure. Gas is more volatile than after the invasion of the Ukraine. When the Ukraine was invaded, basically prices went up and they basically stayed up until they came down. But at the moment, gas is up and down. We're getting massive shifts in price by the hour and by the day. it appears this week that every time Mr. Trump says anything, it has quite an effect on the market. Partly that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, that contracts on the energy market, only about 10% of them are actually for the end user. The rest are for banks, speculators, hedge funds, etc., that, in my opinion, totally distort the market. On the 20th of March, gas was around about 2.6 times the price before the Iran was invaded. At the moment, it's around about 1.7 times. Yesterday afternoon, gas was at 134. Mr. Trump made a few comments. 6 o'clock this morning, it was 119. It's crept up slightly to 122. So we're still at 1.7, 1.8 times pre-Iran. The slightest little thing makes all the difference. They react to missiles, Mr. Trump's comments, and it's extremely erratic, to say the least. Prices now, although gas is about 1.7 times what it was, it doesn't mean that your quote is going to be 1.7 times, because you've got the standing charge to take into account, but prices are still very, very high. And one of the big concerns is that up until early last week, the prices for next year were probably 15% higher than pre-Iran, but a lot lower than they are now. That changed dramatically last week. So at the moment, prices out till the end of 2027 are the same as they are today, and we're not seeing any real falls until middle of 27.
So, David, I mean, we've got what you've highlighted is really the uncertainty and the inability to predict future markets. Because even when we were speaking yesterday, the price differentials for 2027 were very different to what they are today. So this is changing on an hourly basis,
yes,
but highly unpredictable. So we're going to come back to that in a second, but there's also another area, which is electricity. Now, electricity is impacted slightly by gas prices, but what else is going on in electricity? Because we understand there's changes there from the beginning of April, isn't there?
Yeah, unfortunately, as of today, the government have imposed what's called non-commodity charges that have drastically increased, sort of circa 60%. The aim of that is to improve the network so that we can actually move electricity from where it's generated to where it's needed. It's going to take years, and we are basically having to pay for that. They're also trying to reduce the demand around the peak time, which is normally late afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. They're bringing in time of use charges. So the peak periods, generally Monday to Friday, depends where you are, between 4 o'clock and 7. Which effect today.
Brilliant. So, David, now I have got technology issues. I don't know whether anyone else is experiencing technology issues, but your camera's cut off for me. But that might just be my own issues. Thank you for that. So again, your camera's back on. That's brilliant. Thank you. In terms of those prices, so really what we're saying is that there are going to be certain times of the day when electricity is cheaper for people, and that's something we need to think about as within our operations. I know we'll come on to that in a bit later. The last question I just want to clarify with you, David, before we get into the current market situation, is that we hear a lot of stuff, Martin Lewis talking about the energy price cap. Now, for those of us who are businesses, just talk about how that does and doesn't apply to us.
It has no effect at all on commercial. It's purely domestic supplies, and that can even be a domestic supply if it's in maybe a sheltered accommodation. If the contract for the energy is in a commercial name, then the subsidies don't apply, or the price caps don't apply.
So when we've got supported living residents, for example, who pay bills in their own name, then they can benefit from the cap. But if there is a main meter in the business name and maybe there's sub meters to charge those on, that doesn't apply. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Right. So now let's get into the kind of the current market conditions. I'd really like it if you could start to sort of help us understand what the current options are for care providers, given what's going on in the Middle East, and then just considering what we've heard around electricity, there could be some changes there. But just talk us through what the options are at the moment. I think there's 2 or 3 options, isn't there, David? Yeah,
I mean, if we take them separately, gas, as you said, it's very expensive at the moment. Up until the beginning of last week, if you were looking at a year's quote, the energy supplier was looking at the price for every month and every quarter for that whole year. So with the prices in the summer next year being cheaper, you were going to get a quote that blended the very high and basically half the price next summer. You had a blended rate. That changed early last week in that there isn't a cheap period within the next year. So if you're getting a quote now, it's based on a year's high prices, very, very expensive. So if you've got an imminent renewal, you've really got three options. You can look at a very short-term contract, 2-3 months. Those are a lot more complicated to obtain because quoting platforms don't tend to have them. So brokers that use platforms won't be able to obtain you a 2 or 3 month quote within 2 or 3 days. The problem with that is it's 2 or 3 days and things change. But you can look at a 2 or 3 month contract, and something that a lot of providers are not aware of. If you enter a 2 month contract today, and in 3 weeks' time prices fall off a cliff and they drop, you can actually enter another contract to start the day after the 2 month one finishes. So you can take advantage of the drop, but you've got to be set up and ready to do that, which I think we'll come on to a bit later. The other option, so you can either go into a long-term contract, very expensive. You could go on a short-term one with a view to prices hopefully falling. You can enter another one. Obviously, they could rise, it's possible. Or another option is you can go onto your current providers out of contract rates. They are expensive, but if you believe the prices will drop fairly quickly, then you can take advantage of paying higher for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, and then hopefully entering a contract at a much lower price. It's more complex because the energy providers can change the price whenever they feel like it. But what we have done, all the providers we deal with were locked in before the Iran crisis, but we've had an awful lot coming to us that we've never dealt with before, that are in a position where they need to renew soon. And what we can do, as of last night when we finished the software, we can actually tell you what your out of contract costs would be per week based on your consumption. And then we can also give you the alternative quote. The advantage of giving you a quote is once it's in the system, it's very, very quick to refresh the price. It's a matter of seconds. So you can then make a decision based on whether you think price is going to come down and when, and you can take the option of paying out a contract, which is a lot higher. The only slight advantage of doing that at the moment is that the summer's coming and consumption is going down.
So I'm going to try and summarise that so I make sure I understand it as well. I mean, bottom line is, whatever decision we take is a gamble because no one can predict what is going to happen today, tomorrow, this afternoon, next week, next month, next year, or in 2028. We can't predict that. There are too many sort of volatilities. And I know as the war started, you were telling people in the first week, lock in now for 2027 because you'll get it at current rates. And the vast majority of people did lock in, and that was great advice, and it paid off because those rates have now rocketed. We don't know in 3 months' time whether those rates are going to drop and the floor will fall out of the market. We just don't know whether that's going to happen. So, you know, some providers have missed that opportunity. They haven't locked in for 2027 already, but they've got the options now, which are short-term contracts, and they offer flexibility, but there is a risk of further price increases later on. But we need to determine for ourselves, are we prepared to hold on to that risk and hope that, you know, Donald Trump's words of coming out of this will be not too long, and we'll see prices drop over the next few months. Longer term contracts, if we need price certainty and we need to kind of predict and plan our budgets, we might want to look at saying, well, look, I know I'm going to pay a premium now, but if I lock in for a period in the future, I'm locking in, I'm securing a rate that I know I can afford. I don't want to take the risk that it might go even higher, and I don't know what support might be coming or not coming from government. And we are talking to government about that support. We've been exchanging emails with them, haven't we, David, over the last 48 hours around what the costs are and the impacts are currently to care providers to help them figure out what support they might or might not be able to offer. And then you've talked about the out of contract rates, and that's like saying, well, I'm going to take a chance and just see what the market does, and I'll lock in when my risk profile gets to the point at which I need to kind of lock something in. And then you've said that providers really need to start getting prepared to make the decisions. Now, if someone comes to you today and says, right, solve my problem now, you're going to need 24 hours or a few hours to try and get the meter readings, understand their volume, get the ducks in a row, get a profile built. What you're saying to providers is, don't worry when your contracts run out, start getting that profile built now, have a word with you or the broker or whoever it is you trust to talk to on your energy. Have that conversation now, get ready so that as and when the time is right, the button can be pressed. That's what you said, I think, isn't it, Dave? Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, the thing I should mention, if you decide to go on the out of contract rates, we will give you a quote straight away just to benchmark it, and then we can refresh it very quickly. What we are offering at the moment is we're actually constantly monitoring each supplier's out of contract rates. You normally get 2 or 3 days notice that they're going to put them up. If that happens or the energy prices drastically change, then we will send you another email updating you saying this has changed and these are now the comparisons, allowing you to make a decision quickly.
But you need to be in that position when you've done the proprietary work up front. And I know, David, you told me this the other day, you had an inquiry come in the other day, and you had a call scheduled to discuss it, but actually you were able to find a lot of information, do the proprietary work ahead of the call without even speaking to them. So there's some things you can do yourself directly, isn't there?
Yeah, more so with gas than electricity, but gas is more volatile, so it's quite useful. But yeah, we can do a lot of the work in advance. Electricity is far more complex than gas.
Well, it's probably appropriate you come on to gas then. So we're on to electricity. We've talked about what you do in gas. The suggestion is we can't tell you when to fix and what to do. We can give you advice and guidance based on what your risk profile is.
Yes.
But we can say, and the advice that we absolutely do give you says, have the conversation now, get ready so that whether you're renewing in a day, a week, a month, 6 months, or next year, be ready now, because actually you might not have your contract run out until halfway through 2027. But when you know that price in August 27 hits the rate at which you want to lock in, if you have the conversation and you can lock in for that period and you can make sure your risk profile and you've got a certainty then on what you're going to be paying when you're going to be paying it. But let's just move over to electricity for a second, David. What do providers need to know about electricity now? What is it that we need to kind of stress, and what do they need to what ducks do they need to get in a row from an electricity perspective?
There's a few things really. It's all relating to the increase in the non-commodity costs. The first thing that's essential is to know whether your meters are smart meters, which basically means electronically they will send you consumption every 30 minutes. Why that's vital is with the time of day charging, where you're going to pay a lot more during the peak periods that, as I said before, vary considerably around the country. Having the exact data is a big advantage because we actually do bespoke quotes. So we negotiate with suppliers because we deal direct with them, not through a third party. If you don't have a smart meter, then yes, we can give them our averages because I only do with care. But giving them accurate data is essential. There's a big queue for meters because the energy minister has decided that all meters need to be upgraded by the end of this year. In my opinion, absolutely impossible to achieve, but that's what they're saying. And at the moment, there's a consultation that an energy provider might not be able to offer you a fixed contract if you don't have a smart meter. Now, Richard's in constant contact with the various departments and Ofgem, and so am I. And we've asked and not received the answer yet. If someone's requested a meter and they've not received one by the end of the year, this year, who's going to pay the difference? It's probably not been thought about. But the sooner you get the smart meter, the better, because there's a queue. And it also starts recording data. So if, for example, you have your metering today, from today onwards, we've got accurate data. And even if you've only got 3 or 4 months before you renew, we can work out your actual consumption based on the profile of the care sector and what you use in that 3 or 4 months. And there's nothing energy suppliers love more than accurate data, but you need a smart meter. And when we analyze smart meter data, we'll also advise you how much you're using during the peak periods, depending on where you are in the country. And it's possible in some cases where the expensive period is 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 7 at night, Monday to Friday, that you may have an in-house laundry that's electrically powered that runs 9 till 5, and it might be possible to move that 8 till 4, quite a considerable saving. Maybe we'll come on to it later, but the other thing, if you offer EV charging, if it's possible to not use that during the peak periods. If anybody wants to know what the peak periods are, you can either look it up in the latest newsletter I sent out or just email us and we'll tell you when your peak periods are. But accurate data is essential. And because there's such a queue, and I believe the queue will get busier and busier as we get near the end of the year, it's essential to know whether your meter is smart or not. If you need any help with that, just contact us and we'll help you.
And again, all of that advice and guidance is absolutely free, and we do encourage you to have those conversations. So bottom line, you need to get a smart meter if you haven't got a smart meter. That half-hourly data will give you access to better rates, and it'll give you access to real data. And knowing when your peak times are, if you've got multiple sites in different locations, they could have different peak times. And then looking at, well, what are your high-use energy items for electricity, like the laundry, it could be tumble dryers, it could be washing machines, it could be irons, it could be EV charging. What are those high use items, and actually using those outside of core hours or outside of the peak times could generate some very significant savings. That's really, really helpful, David. Thank you. That sort of concludes. Oh, sorry, carry on, David.
I think I should add that we have developed a new product where traditionally you might get a single rate or a day-night rate or a day-night and a weekend. We now have access to products that charge you literally different rates for different times a day. So it will charge you a different rate during the red period. So decreasing your consumption in that period certainly reduces your costs. It also helps with your emissions and your CO2 and everything else. But this is a brand new product that was available about 3 or 4 days before the Iran was invaded or commenced the war. But that will be available once the market settled down. And where quoting has got far more complex now is we've got access to day-night rates, day-night weekend rates, what we call red, amber, green for the 3 different periods of the day. And we can even get even more complex in that we can basically cut out any speculation with a next day product, whereby the electricity supplier will buy your electric the day before you're going to use it. Obviously, the prices will vary every day, but analysing the statistics over the last 4 years, it is cheaper. And the reason being, when you get a quote for a fixed quote, the energy supplier is building in a premium for the anticipated risk of them getting the price wrong. Whereas if you're buying it for the day ahead, they don't have that, and that reduces costs as well. It's a more complex product. It's not suitable for people who want budget certainty, but it is available.
Brilliant, thank you. And at this point, please do raise your hands if you'd like to ask a question directly, or pop in the chat any questions that you have got, and we'll get to those as well. Just to give it, the red periods are the high peak periods, and you need those smart meters to really be able to identify those periods. We have got a question come in from Shab. Shab says that they are locked in until September 2028, but many brokers are telling them to fix from 28 onwards. What would your advice be on this? And I think this is one thing that we're really cautious of at the moment. There are lots of brokers on lots of telephones making lots of phone calls, giving out lots and lots of advice and guidance. And if you go back to what I said earlier, whatever advice anyone gives you, it's gambling. Okay, so it has to match your risk profile. But David, please do, if you've got thoughts on that situation, it'd be very helpful.
I'll be polite, and I suggest that you ask the broker to justify the comment, because they won't be able to. Nobody knows the future price. Nobody knows what it's going to be in 2028. And renewing now when the market is so high, we wouldn't advise doing that.
And again, we don't know that this current crisis is not going to escalate further. We simply do not know. No one does know. If you look at the news, I'm sure you're all very informed people. Everyone listens to the radio, watches the news. They understand to see what's going on. There is definitely a drive towards trying to de-escalate and slow things down and stop them happening. We can only hope that will be the case, but there will always be a tail to what is going on. It's going to take time to restabilise for the reserves to be built up. 2028 seems like a long way away, but it'll be here before we know it. But again, I would go back to the point around, you need to look at your risk profile. If you are fearful of rates increasing beyond what you're currently committed to, and you think that could be problematic for you as an organisation, then you might take this back to your board. It becomes a board decision, a senior leadership decision about saying, look, it's a risky strategy, but I'm choosing to lock in because actually I want to mitigate any future risk. But if the market stabilises and it goes back to normal, you might have locked in at 2.5 times what the rates are that you should be looking in at. Now, so I think there is some general advice, isn't there? So organisations that renew in the winter, in the colder periods, sometimes there is an opportunity to look at maybe shorter term contracts to bring the renewal periods into the summer months when things are warmer and energy is cheaper. Is that still good advice?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally or historically, about 40% of energy contracts renew on the 1st of October, which is in energy terms deemed the start of winter, and 40% on the 1st of April, which is the first day of summer. I've never been able to obtain an answer as to why, apart from that's the way it's always been. But because at those times there are so many contracts being renewed, there's not a lot of incentive for an energy provider to be competitive trying to obtain business because they're so busy. And also prices are far more volatile at that time of year. We like to try and move people onto a summer renewal, so June, July, August. Markets are generally less volatile and there's more competition to obtain business. It's more complex. A lot of brokers don't like doing it because quoting platforms traditionally will quote even years, so 1, 2, or 3. They don't like having odd dates. If you've got numerous suppliers with different dates, it's far more complex to get a contract or a quote where they all start at different dates and end on the same date. That's something we do all the time. Saves you a lot of admin. Moving to summer, generally speaking.
I have got some connectivity. So I don't know if that's me, David, or whether that's you, but I've lost you.
It is David, because you are coming very clearly, but David, the screen starts flickering and then it goes basically. So it's certainly David.
Thank you very much for confirming. That's really very helpful. I think I saw another question pop in the chat there, so I don't know if you can just send that to me very quickly. Another question has just come in. So yeah, is there a point in renewing electricity early to avoid government levies? My understanding is that these are unavoidable to an extent, regardless of when you fix. I think this is the fixed charges we're talking about, isn't it?
You can't avoid them. They've been incorporated into quotes since last year. So although they come into effect today, they've always been there. And one of the concerns for a lot of people is some energy suppliers are reopening fixed contracts and increasing the price because of the increased commodity costs. Some of them are doing it, a lot of them are not, which is why we're very fussy about which energy providers we place business with.
Yeah, and there's some quite perverse incentives that are pushed onto some brokers to say certain things and act and do things in certain ways. But as I say, Shab, if you've got any doubts, you can always pick up the phone. We'll make sure when we send a copy of the recording out from this call, but you can get it off on our website. We'll make sure you've got David's details. You can always just give David a quick call and say, I've got a question. David will answer it for you. If you've got an existing broker, that's absolutely fine. What we would always suggest is just have a conversation with someone who we know is caring and that we have trusted to do this for care providers and operate for our sector. And we've got many hundreds of and thousands of meters actually that are successfully transacting very happily on David's advice. But the advice is free. I would just suggest take advantage of it. So we've got no more questions that have come in. Does anyone like to raise their hand or come off mute and ask a question to David directly? Dilip, please ask David a question.
Yeah, basically you mentioned, and with regards to if the contract is coming to an end in 27 or whatever, keep a lookout for cheap prices that have come up at any given time and lock them in. How does one lock this in? I'm sorry, I'm a layman basically. So
no, not at all. It's a very good question. I mean, the more complex for electricity and gas, but once we get your details, we've got the type of meter and your supply number. We can look at your consumption. Once we put that into the system, we can obtain a quote now, even though prices are very high. But to refresh that price is a couple of minutes, as and when the market dips. And what we will do is anybody who wants to be kept informed, we can set you up on the system. And if you say, let me know when prices drop, then we'll just send you an email. We don't make phone calls. We'll send you an email saying prices have come down. This is your quote now.
But
the other thing is, it's the other thing we would check is if you've got smart meters or not, and if you haven't, we'll help you obtain them being upgraded quicker.
That was the question I was going to be asking, that we need to be having the smart meter, right? Basically.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's also worth adding that if you refuse a smart meter after the 1st of January next year, the energy supplier can increase your cost or cancel the contract.
That's for commercial only, right? Not for domestic.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the only objections we get to smart meters occasionally are people who've got very advanced nursing equipment, and there's a rumor that they interfere with some of the medical equipment. We've never been able to prove that. And people that have actually changed to a smart meter have not had any problems.
So I think the advice there is to have that conversation. I mean, you can pick up with David offline, have that conversation, get yourself ready, and it's entirely up to you. If you would like David to send you something when the market's dropped to a level you're comfortable with, he can send that information out to you. But David doesn't chase people, so he'll send the information out and he'll give it to people. People can make a decision, but David is not selling on behalf of Caring, and he'll give you the information. You can make a decision from that information. He'll give you a deal that he believes to be the best one available on the market, and we've proven to be incredibly successful on that one. I want to say 100% of the time, but I should never probably say 100%, should you? But we do have 100% renewals, but again, I probably shouldn't say 100% renewals, because there'll always be one person that says, I didn't renew. But the information is there. It's up to providers to act exactly as they wish to do so. What I will say is, you don't have to do what we do. So me as a domestic resident, a domestic person, I move my energy every couple of years to a different provider. You as a commercial business can commit to your energy for the next 3 months. You could commit for 27's period. You could commit to 28's period. You can have gaps in your commitment. You've got a lot of flexibility, so you can really take advantage of when the markets are at the right rates for you and for your organisation and your risk profile. That's the gambling bit, but that's, if it helps you, you can do that. And that's where someone like David can usually help you process some of those decisions to think about what works best for you to secure what it is you want. Nick, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's a quick question for David. I don't know if I misunderstood, but I heard you say earlier some suppliers are opening up their fixed contracts and changing the rates. Did you mean that if you're in a fixed contract, they're not sticking to the rate they originally? I mean, are they allowed? Isn't that the point of a fixed contract, that they can't change it?
Well, it depends on the terms of each supplier. It's not happened to any of our providers. I'm hoping that's because we're quite fussy about who we place business with. So it's not happened to us, but it's becoming more and more common. 2 suppliers have announced this week they're not going to do it. But under the terms of most contracts, which are normally 20, 30 pages, they can open them up.
Well, what's happened a couple of months ago, probably quite luckily, hopefully, we did renew for a 5-year contract because of turmoil in everything. I wanted to get a 5-year thing in, and I think rates were pretty good then. And as far as I can remember, it's with British Gas, and we've got a 5-year contract locked in. Is there a danger that they might renege on that? I think it starts in a month or two's time. We did it quite a bit in advance.
Is that for electricity or gas?
For both.
Right, well, gas is extremely unlikely because we don't have the increase in non-commodity costs. Electricity, it's impossible to say whether they will or they won't. Nobody can tell. I know the ones that have said they're definitely not going to.
Are they allowed to renege on it though? Because we've signed a contract and they've signed it.
Under the terms of some of these suppliers' contracts, they can reopen them.
Right.
Is that force majeure, David, or is it just statutory changes that mean?
No, it's really down to all the fine print in all those contracts that nobody ever reads, apart from geeks like me.
Is that something that Nick could send you a copy of his contract and you tell him whether he has what his risk exposure might be? Is that something that you would do as part of your audits?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Interestingly, Richard, I don't want to drift on about that force majeure thing. I was thinking there was another issue a few weeks ago, talking to Lloyd about it. He said that's not actually a thing in statutory law. It's force majeure can come up in terms and conditions, but it's what's in the terms and conditions is relevant as a, you know, above everything thing force majeure. You probably know that it doesn't actually exist, really.
No.
It's what's in the terms and conditions that really makes the
Yes.
relevant
And
point.
few people read them.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you, Nick. I mean, force
Okay.
majeure in my legal training was something that we talked about. It's an abuse provision, but when we've got lots of SMEs dealing with large multi-billion-pound turnover organisations, if one of their lawyers says something, you tend to think, well, I'm not going to argue with that because I haven't got the bandwidth or the capacity to be able to argue with it, and they'll use it to their advantage, appropriately or not. But yeah, I mean, one of the services, David, you're flickering again. One of the services that we asked David to provide for us was energy audits, and his role there is to engage with care providers to, you know, review their bills, to understand their costs, to understand their contracts, understand what they're doing, how they're doing it. Is there an opportunity to recover costs? We've seen over £4+ million worth of VAT and CCL charges been recovered. 14 million of CCL and VAT recovered. And there's no charge for that. That's just something that David's managed to recover for care providers where they've been overcharged because the broker hasn't done the paperwork to make sure the right measures were in place. So there are lots of things that people, charges that people pay on their bills that they don't know that they shouldn't be paying. And I will just say, you mentioned a partner, a provider, a supplier a moment ago. We have had many claims in with exactly that organisation where they had charged things in the past. Mistakes get made a lot, an awful lot, which is why we really do encourage the smart meters and getting those audits done. They don't cost anything, but they can really uncover some very uncomfortable findings. And if you've got a broker that will give you a deal based on an estimated usage and that usage turns out to be wrong, you can find yourself getting hit and slapped with some really challenging additional charges if you don't meet the amount of energy you said you're going to buy, or if you over purchased and they had understated the amount you're going to buy. So there's lots of really challenging brokers out there who are earning a lot of commission for trying to sell packages, and we do encourage you to take impartial advice and, you know, cross-reference some of what you're being told.
Okay, thanks very much. And one last question then, if I may. Okay, last one. Do you do anything on the side of water?
Yeah, you're based in England or Wales, are you?
England, West Midlands.
Okay, the water market is nowhere near as competitive as Scotland, basically because it deregulated for, well, I don't know how many years ago, 20 years ago in Scotland. So you can get some fairly drastic savings in Scotland. The savings are not massive in England, but the advantage you've got is if you've got properties in different areas, we can actually combine them all, so you get basically one bill. And some providers are getting 20 or 30 water bills and 20 or 30 waste bills. So you're getting 60 direct debits and an awful lot of paperwork. We can actually combine those. You might save 2% over what you're currently paying, but you're going to cut down your admin and your bank charges.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much. Thank you.
I've got no more questions coming. Does anyone else want to raise their hand? Anyone else got any questions they wanted to put to David? We're here for another 20 minutes if you would like us. If not, I will just say a huge thank you for joining. We will try and keep you updated with the volatility of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. But again, we'll make sure you've got David's contact details. If you want to reach out, just reach out to him directly, and he will answer any questions that he possibly can for you or point you in the right direction. So just to say a big thank you. Thank you, Kerry, too. Thank you for joining. I wish you all the very, very best. And yeah, I hope that this kind of settles down quickly so that we can kind of get back to a slightly more structured environment. Thank you very much. David, I'll ask you to stay on, please. Solon, if you can end that for me.